Hello, the species value nature system. Hello, Lost Leech. Here, talk to you about election crimes and the rackets that set them up for their evidence crimes. America was born with both parties maintained educationally, and internation police formed here before our founders' births. Internation maintained pseudo-identity roles with and as what had slavery entrenched with and as a database relationship with crazy laws against everyone, worse than witch trials, against speech, and cultivating reactions to the database relationship with the laws against what people could say about even talking about building infrastructure, because they were setting up a long-term people stacking and tactically denatured relationship to nature that they had already understood before sciences were criminally re-engineered in semi-ancient times before modern nations. They knew this would cause negative value nature progressions, that they could invest formal leaderships of all modern nations, blaming on other causes on other, and then having to defend that, and then having to hide lie progressions, and then sharing means and needs and natures to do it with database crimes. So that's not democracy. And so they put up the Russian issue because it's with sensitivities with fact treatment nature that are incapable of the quality of fact treatment nature to show how that is exploited by nations that don't get along on paper, but they get along, the way we do business in relationship to business, but as a tactical ulterior from natural value nature system juxtaposed private, legalized criminal nations here, legalized criminal insidious nature nations, and with an as criminal insidious nature that can't defend itself, and us from what juxtaposed overt criminal enterprises, natures and acts, and progressions with it, within us that value, with all areas. People needing to hide the same lie. That's within as areas within as the victim predators the most in relationship to pseudo-sophistication. Only sophistication in comparison to people with tactically pseudo-educated, criminally foreign influence education. Not because of opinions, because opinions aren't with the ability to have free speech. In other words, as a quality of fact treatment nature that's abridged, and they're fighting for that. They want people to say simple things, but then if you say simple things, they're dishonest opinions, criminally foreign influenced opinions, sick to all areas, same way they were with slavery, motivated to other breaching roles per a crazy organized crime method. A breaching organized crime method. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. So, our history is about how they wouldn't let free speech, anyone of government or anyone not, because and doing it, motivating it with an tactical ulterior from actual value nature system, actual from the truths. So democracy has notions as a criminal insidiousness nature about opinions, about convictions that are denying the right for exceptions to demonstrate what exceptions are by science for, in demonstration of the identity of positive, because it also has as a progressive value, temporary positive, it also has a further positive or negative relationship to itself as a formation, as negative or positive value nature network. So now all modern nations are agreed and or are hurt by not agreeing to four shared knave sciences and policing of markets and of claimed free that are differentially not. Fake sides, fact treatment wise too. So we have nations here, a whole bunch of them, that have interests together to cover their roles with database illusion stacking through interbranch families juxtaposed with other nations' police here. Other nations' roles with placements in colleges and with placements in stores, policing them together, policing markets positions together. And with justifications of that, fact treatments with that, they can't, not only you can't defend them and also at the same time, with quality fact treatment nature, you know, they're offensively torturing through time, through lifespans, people with fact treatment rackets, you know, sequence shifting and setting up exceptions to purposely deny them, purposely make mistakes, evidence mistakes. Like when they make the Russian treatment, even bringing it up and classifying it that way without showing how that is recorded. Juxtaposed with them with crimes with other nations and with the trade center, with the value of that attack, in purposely to keep it where not one nation is capable of countering what really was behind it, which is a breaching organized crime method that was just fluent through our nations. And that's recorded. That's not just what religions are about. That's recorded. So we come to alpha value. Alpha and omega value is within the alphabet value. That's why alpha's in the beginning of it. Alpha and omega are semi-discernible, are clear and visible, but still discernible value as a nature and as its relationship to itself, as that temporary, lasting positive being formed, as quality of diffusion, which is further positive or negative. See yin yang. The whole yin yang is either positive progression or negative progression. It is in the way it is to its as either progressive value to itself, because in parallel with the only realized progressive value gain of space's identity, three semi-natures of it bonded, Trinity, inherently, actively, and progressively in diffusion to itself as a quality, from our perspective, as the phenomenon of the inherent volume only mixing with the active volume juxtaposed with matter and with the progressive forever nature already made through it. So for forever natures, by two semi-natures of the complete identity of its of space, is the only semi-nature that is at the same time a complete nature, because it's a semi-nature also with the inherent portion, and both those portions won't mix with the active portion and with the progressive portion already made, with the value of temporary space nature gaining through the amount of the value of the semi-nature that's progressively gaining through temporary space nature. When that perfect value gain is not let through our species value, and or through our individual value, finite, and or group or sexes, value, nation value, together, it's forced away from here, Leith of Hades. The original ancients, they had, before there was internation sciences that were even contained, that kept them as a value, that could see what was going to cause positive value nature progressions or negative value nature progressions, what was going to cause evolution or de-evolution. They could see that there's radical value discernment per science, per the value shared by what is pseudo-ratiocination and ratiocination, by the value shared as a nature, and also as a nature unto itself, by the value of not just ratiocination, pseudo-ratiocination. That's critical. Which ratiocination is simultaneously is an inherent value of correlation nature, which is a simultaneous ability to discern what is simultaneously, inherently, actively, and progressively the value relationship to the nature of correlation, because it is not to physics at the same time. And beyond this, because the complete identity of space, only but through its identity, through that bond, does it mix with temporary space nature. Zero gravity is manifest in relationship to it. So there's an inherent volume that won't mix with the active volume, that won't mix with the nature of volume of forever nature, that won't mix with the progressive forever nature already made. It will only stay perfectly positive value nature, as positive and negative value nature together is positive value nature in relationship to a semi-nature of the complete identity of space, which is the only portion of itself that is the whole self. I mean, the only way it juxtaposes all three natures of volume. The inherent volume has an active volume. It's the two natures of the same volume, but they won't mix because it comes from that. But that gains the inherent volume's value. That gains the creation of more forever nature, actively juxtaposed matter. That gains the progression nature, simultaneously holding that to value nature progression here or force from here. Immediate space nature is in relationship to the position that is closest to the inherent portion of the complete identity of space that won't come into temporary space nature. Even though there's a forever nature that is it, it's still a semi-nature of it. We have cells in demonstration of this, of a trinity's relationship to itself, which is with the cell nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall. The identity of the cell nucleus and the cell body shared as the body of the cell wall. And with each other, their identities. And with their identity together, shared as the cell wall. Then that is coupled with the other cell's identity too, going a little beyond theirs. Every body of nature has often a omega next to it, like our polar, what they call the magnetic field. This is what the ancients would say, probably more accurately. In other words, the word quality of diffusion, what it looks like, is while the value of the forever natures in diffusion through temporary space nature Earth, it's as a quality of factor in diffusion also positive or negative onto itself. This is demonstrated by Leith of Hadid's, by what causes evolution, positive value nature progressions, or negative value nature progression, Leith of Hadid's, per space's relationship to itself. Because the complete, in other words, so the inherent volume is growing an active volume. The active volume is making more of a progressive volume. And all three are gaining volume together because they're wrapped by the identity of space, Allah. In English, that name revealed to teach this with science together and distinctly. Value A, value A, with Allah's name, is used to teach about value alpha, about the Trinity. Because the Trinity has a relationship to itself as values progression. So to understand it, we have to understand that progression. Yang was drawn to teach this. But the sciences were criminally re-engineered in every modern nation, before modern nations came. But it wasn't always like this. The original ancients had realized, they had all kinds of things against them that drew them to unity and to the appreciation of that before criminally foreign influenced sciences. That led sciences and led our nature realize the quality of fact treatment nature and care for fact treatment nature that understood and couldn't believe that humanity would forget how to cause evolution, which is to be within that science too, as a correlation nature, as a value nature system per one that we're not telling the rules of. We're going by, we know what it want, we want by it, but we're trying to do that through its system. In other words, only what's going to be positive all ways and only in all contexts is the identity of space coming through it, which is a semi-nature of itself coming perfectly through temporary space nature in conjunction with ours, and then in conjunction with its complete identity at the same time. So we have three natures of a greater identity of ourselves, even greater than our individual identity as value, as a nature, greater than our body. Even greater than that, we're like cells in the body of space. We're a sequence nature. What is positive to us is also positive onto every other body of its nature. As long as we're that nature, trying to be what is positive only in all contexts, and only in noting exceptions, because exceptions were by space's system and demonstration to us. This is what has us as a fact treatment nature needing to understand that as value, as a value relationship to what is going to cause positive value nature progression's evolution or de-evolution. Take our course, return the force, return to source, fake sides. So we have politicians that are victims of criminally foreign influenced sciences in relationship to other nations, recorded pretending prejudice and culture differences, systemic as victim predators of areas maintained inter-nation facilitated database crime stacking roles, formal, private, and overtly gangland and unrealized, all tied to database illusion stacking and evidence crime stacking rackets. That's what really is behind the odd in relationship to people stacking in New York City and in cities throughout the world. This was forced in the North by what had the slavery of our founders. Crazy laws, crazier than witch trials. If you even talked, if you were even found out talking about building infrastructure outside of inter-nation monitored database relationships, then they did really bad things, scary things. People are even afraid. So people are going to live like that. They built the criminal insidiousness nature. All different identities of the same sequence nature progression to the defense of it. And from a base that was already propagated bionize this with the earth tactically denatured and enslaved even here before our founders' births, per a method that new founders would come, per the crazy law they had to get out of, because no one wants to live like that. But then they're going to be stuck perpetually contained, defending fact treatment in nature in relationship to a tactical ulterior from actual fact treatment nature system. And then they're going to have to justify that. And they call that democracy. Because they're victim predators, mass, criminally foreign influence. Both parties of, and all different exceptions exploited with each modern nation is recorded. We have fact treatment rushed in this progression to go to elections treatments recorded, not anyone who has the quality of fact treatment nature to demonstrate, like when they say, that undermines our credibility with the FBI and stuff like that. That's a relationship to nations here arguing with arguments regarding the Trade Center tied to agreements with education tied to this. Shared policing, how we're going to share our education. The policing of schools, private, and other criminally foreign influence. Database illusion stacking. Breaking rules that they're not supposed to break, because when it comes down to it, they're covering up what's too much of a headache for them to go into detail, and they're not supposed to give up each other. And that's part of the problem, because we have internation families with our schools that are evidence crime roles with areas predators facilitated for evidences crime rackets, sustained to all areas, so sustained in courts. They're maintaining victim the overt internation criminal enterprises would not be if we had a quality fact treatment nature actual science, which is using only what is true always and noting exceptions. Because then you have the real identity of positive and its progression. So the ancient snow people are about only how you discern and contemplate and speculate on what is going to be only going to be stayed, only positive always, and only in all noting and any exceptions, any finite exceptions or anything, especially over all ones, and body of value ones, noting exceptions, not leaving anything out. If we're having exceptions noted, finite always positive, active value always positive, and right to left, top down always positive. These three pluses, that's the identity of positive. The identity of space as the nature of positive cause to a trinity that is manifest to all parts of itself. So even one, it won't mix with active and already made more forever nature as temporary space nature. It will one way, only that way, perfectly. And that's the only semi-value, the identity of space, that is also the only complete value at the same time. The only reason it's a semi-value at the same time too, is the cause of the inherent volumes gaining value, which is to an active volume and to a progressive volume at the same time. And so this trinity is an active value nature relationship to itself. Value being the identity of space, and value nature being this nature, three dimensions, in diffusion through itself as one value, three dimensions, three semi-natures of one identity, in diffusion through itself to all parts of itself. Just like our identity is onto all parts of our body, the identity of spaces. Just like we feel pain when parts of our body are on a negative value nature progression attached to it. All space feels, and it pushes away what was won't stay its perfect positive value nature progression here, which is negative value nature progression and positive as one nature, expanding the phenomena of the semi-nature, which is the extent of the complete nature right there with it, gaining value through temporary space nature. And see, so now modern nations agree to be negative, right to left, a tactically ulterior from actual fact treatment nature, value nature system, actual space nature's means in nature and system, which only demonstrates through positive or negative value nature progressions. So it has been demonstrating since semi-ancient times negative value nature progressions and demonstration of right to left. Fact treatment nature claim positive, that is not, pseudo-positive, as criminal insidiousness nature, as nations criminally legalized as criminal insidiousness natures, as victim predators, as whole nations and whole areas and states of nations kept in collusion with other nations, keeping all voices, equality of fact treatment nature prohibited. And so our defense prohibited because this fluent through what is fluent through nations, justified and invested with and as that quality of fact treatment nature, and with and as the quality of means it provides, and with and as justifications of negative value nature progressions that it causes, blamed on others, not on its real causes, which science has the means to demonstrate. If you stack people like that, you're gonna have problems. If you have people who are going to exploit that, being the only people to remedy those problems, you have other nature problems. And those problems were set up. That's why they had the laws with black and white, where all the laws against every color, against every difference, against women, against men, rackets, keeping not just studying, engineering a criminal insidiousness nature, a body of value as nature, and as its relationship to itself, maintain self-defending, criminally foreign influence. It's like if you take a great person, you have them raised by psychos. It's not about DNA. No, you have them raised by bad people, they can be a bad person. You see what I'm saying? You have them raised by victims of pseudo-education, end up being a bad person through or roles to it because they're going to be incapable of quality of fact treatment nature. We're going to have formal and overtly gangland, which is not my phrase. This is a phrase tied to the transition from ACA to RICO, into agencies' roles with this nature of organized crime, loss, and as it with other nations. So when they do the Russian treatments with election crimes, they were obligated to do what they did, and that was measured and exploited. In other words,